Hello, and welcome back to Civ Stories. I'm your host, Kyle, and I'll be taking you through stories of miracles, military brilliance, and pure craziness within the Civilization game universe. Today, we have a little bit of a different approach. I'm joined with my friend Gary, and he will discuss one of his first Civ games. As always, if you'd like to submit your own stories for me to read and discuss, feel free to email them at storiesofciv@gmail.com. Gary, how's it going today?
It's going good, Kyle. How are you?
Great. I'm really excited for this story. I heard brief bits of it and it sounds really funny. So
Oh
why
yeah.
don't you take it away?
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for the brief introduction. I'll
Of
elaborate a little more.
course.
Yeah, I'm a good friend of Kyle's. Known him for a while. I've been playing Civ. Oh, geez, probably since 2014.
Hmm.
I don't know. How long have you been playing it for?
So I've been watching since the game came out in 2010, but I've only been playing for like 4 years, so like 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you mostly you mostly play Civ 5 too, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
have Civ 6. God, what was it? It was like free on the Epic Games or something. But I'm almost
Hmm.
exclusively Civ 5 because I was
Yeah.
also oh geez, around the time you started, around like 2016, even to 2017, I was part of the No Quitters group. Some of
Right.
the listeners will probably know about it, and I played a few games in there, but I haven't been on it like active, really in like the last couple of years.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you probably have some great stories from that community as well. I've heard brief things about it.
oh yeah. The one I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you guys today, though, it's a fun one. I'll just get right into it. I got the game. A friend of mine, who I played this one with, he had talked me into getting Civ. I forgot
Hmm.
how many years ago it was. And the same day, I download Civ, right, and I boot up this one
Hmm.
game. I'm playing single player. I think I was like Poland or something. 4 turns in, I meet a city state. I attack them. My warrior gets
As you do.
destroyed. Yep. And
Hmm.
then I'm like, screw this, and I quit. And then later that night, my friend, he's like, you want to play a game? I'm like, screw it. So we boot up a game. I think it was like standard, like medium or large map. I'm not entirely
Hmm.
sure, but he was Brazil and I was Russia. And, the plan was I'd get like the double uranium or something, and then we'd like kick ass in the end. But the game started out. I think we put in, oh geez, I want to say like 4 civs, and like the
Hmm.
general amount of city states for like a medium map.
Yeah.
And one of the civs, oh god, I would always hate them, was Morocco, and I'll get to a
Oh,
little bit of that later.
I love playing as
Oh,
Morocco, but I can continue.
yeah, they're fun, but when they're the AI, they do some devious stuff, man. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was. But this was like my real first Civ experience. And I'm like, oh God, what's going on?
Hmm.
So I had to ask him. I'm like, like, what do I do? I go through the
Right.
runs. I found Moscow. There's my monument. There's like my scout or whatever it was. And I had like no real strategy. Like I had no idea. Like I had no
Hmm.
sense of what was coming throughout the science tree. Like what I was going to gain access to the
Yeah.
late game. So the game,
Were you?
yeah.
I just want to
Oh,
interject
go
real
right
quick.
ahead, Kyle.
Do you try to like when you first started out? Did you try to like um, use your like real world senses? Because I know that's how I used to play, and still if I want to
Mm.
tell like a good story, I try to just be like, okay, this makes sense. I'm Russia. I'm going to attack this city state, or like, oh, I need these units because it just makes sense in the real world. Did you find yourself like using that as a
I would say yeah, especially in the beginning, because kind of like that's the only thing you have to fall back on. Like I'm playing a game
Mhm.
as Russia, I might as well play as Russia.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, thank you. But like as soon as we get into the classical, oh shit just hits the fan, and I have no idea what I'm doing at that point. Oh god, I settled because I had no sense, of like money, culture, religion, or anything. Actually,
Hmm.
I remember there was a couple ancient ruins I got, and I got enough faith. I was the first one to found a pantheon,
Oh yeah.
and I think I got like God King or something because I'm like, ooh, extra science. And I'm settling city after city. It's like almost the end of the classical era, and I have like 6 cities. And then I see
Damn.
it. I see on a little peninsula. to my west, I see Florence. And I'm like, I want Florence. So I spend, oh my gosh, it had to have been at least like 40 turns trying to take Florence. And all I had was chariot archers or like something like
Uh-huh.
that. And
No melee
yep,
units.
then I realized I need a melee unit. And
Classic falter.
yeah, my friend does. He swoops in with a trireme and takes the city.
Oh my
So,
goodness. That seems. I know the friend you're talking about. That seems very on brand for what they would do.
yes, he's a devious one.
Yeah.
God, but yeah. Oh, I should give you a little laydown on what the world was looking like. I think he said, yeah, it
Yeah.
was a medium map. Continents, of course. Got to go the standard. And
Hmm.
I was in the southern part of the map because like that Russian start bias. I was kind of near the tundra. And to the north of me, on like this bulge, kind of looked like a hat on the continent, was Brazil, where my friend was.
Hmm.
And to his west was like a little 3 tile extension that came out to the north, and that's where Florence was. So my friend was playing like a classic tall game. He had like 3 cities. Once he got universities, he was racking in the science bonus with all the jungles around.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I decided, like the game's pretty much lost for me, so I'm just gonna like go crazy. So
Hmm.
all I build in my cities is settlers, and I set up this huge line around the entire like his entire southern border. So I mean, like St.
Hmm.
Petersburg and stuff, we kind of started close to each other, so we're really close. Um,
Hmm.
and then I settled.
Which policy did you go as? I don't know if you.
Oh my gosh, I probably ended up going like tradition or liberty. Or it's like a
Hmm.
mix, or like, oh, rationalism opened up. Let me adopt that.
Yeah.
So no like set.
No real set guideline
Yeah.
with the first game. That's understandable.
But the interesting part was to the west of the continent, on the western shores, a good distance away was Morocco. And
Hmm.
I forget, I think like the Celts or someone was like to the north,
Hmm.
but my friend like destroyed them. So I said, oh, screw you, Morocco. And I started to move because my line of cities was going west and I turned down to go south. So I would kind of make this like box, kind of like an inverted L. You could probably imagine it.
Yeah.
And right as I finished the line, I'm like, yes, completed. A Moroccan city appears. Boom, right in the middle. Like 15 tiles in from the wall of cities. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's gotta be one of the most annoying things in a Civ game. And we ever get to talking about our current game, that's definitely gonna be
Oh my
a
gosh.
forefront. That mid to late game push, especially when Civs are like, when the AI knows it's on its way out, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, let me send this settler out into the nowhere, and then nowhere happens to be right where you want to settle.
Exactly. Yeah, the forced settling. Oh, it is such a problem. And I think we
Hmm.
were, oh God, we were probably on like Prince difficulty, if I were to imagine
Yeah, first
something.
game, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
And yeah, especially towards the end there. Let's see, when I got cannons, my friend had already had artillery. I remember, I'll always remember this. As soon as Morocco force settled me, I declared war. And the funny part of
Hmm.
that war is I actually never ended up taking that city that he force settled. So
Yeah.
by the time he had force settled me, he kind of like pushed up towards my western wall of cities.
Hmm.
And uh, despite me and
What
my friend, yeah, go right ahead, Dad.
what was Morocco like how they advanced along the tech tree?
So they were about, I want to say, in between me and my friend. So they
Hmm.
had already had cannons when I was getting cannons, but they weren't quite at artillery yet. But
Okay.
they were pretty big. I was about to say their military, I know, is definitely larger than mine, but tech level, yeah, I think they were, just a little bit ahead of me. But
Hmm.
I was not ready for a war at all. And pretty quickly, 2 of my cities were lost on that western wall, and I'm freaking out. And my friend's like, "Oh, okay." So in the part where Brazil and Russia bordered, he started moving over a couple artillery, and he like gifted them to me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I had archers and like my one cannon over there besieging Morocco, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm doing some damage." And I bring the new
Hmm.
artillery down. Takes a few turns. There's a battle raging on at the western wall. I'm like, oh god, I gotta go over here before they start taking me out. And the first shot I fire with the artillery completely almost destroys the entire health of Moroccan City. And I'm freaking
Oh my
out. I'm like, oh my god. Like to my friend, I'm like, you have the most advanced shit ever.
Yeah, I mean those first games when you've never played with a unit before, um, there comes a point, especially around the industrial era, where it's just like, wow, I can actually do damage, especially with civs that are under prepared on the tech tree.
It was truly amazing.
And it's funny that you mentioned the gifted units. That's something people, at least people we play with, don't really examine. Like I know I've been in games where it's like I have proxy wars with civ states, city states, excuse me, where like I'll gift city states units and like I won't actually be at war. Or like there's that time Jerusalem and the Vatican City were at war, which is a whole story in and of itself. I think would be really. I mean that kind of mechanic should definitely be used more. You really get a kick out of it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it was quite the revelation to see the
Yeah.
artillery do its work. But after
I mean,
that, yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
were you afraid that your friend would backstab you,
Yes,
or what
yes.
was the relationship like?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so after I'd gotten a couple of the artilleries, I made quick work of Morocco. I think,
Uh,
what is their capital? Is it like Marrakesh or something? Marrakech?
yeah.
I want to say that sounds about, yeah. And once they were gone, you kind of get, especially in like a two-player, like a co-op game, not really co-op,
Oh yeah.
head-to-head, I want to say, you get to that point where you're starting to meet each other in technology, and you're like, the only opponents are each other. You're like, who's going to
Right.
make the first move?
So you
So,
guys weren't,
yeah,
because I know sometimes when I play with friends, we only want to fight the AI, so we play on the same team. But I take it that wasn't the case with you guys.
yeah, we were just kind of working cooperatively until that
Mm-hmm.
point. I think, oh my gosh, I think it's when I entered the modern era, um, stuff really started to get like in a head-to-head notion. And I
Mm-hmm.
started, instead of pumping out settlers, I started pumping out units.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was, oh god, lining up all the units because my wall of cities, is butting up against his southern border. And it was so funny.
Right.
I'd be showing up with like my musketmen and riflemen and stuff. And then, like, oh, there's a Brazilian infantry. Oh, there's like a Brazilian mechanized infantry. Like every so now and then, the units would like move and come back and be replaced with
Mm-hmm.
the higher tier stuff.
Oh my god, the paranoia when that happens.
Ugh,
That's part of the episode I'm working on now. Is just like examining that paranoia because that happens in every game,
exactly.
especially with people that you don't really you don't know where the diplomatic relations are going to go. You
Hmm.
know, it's just like, oh, he's moving. Is it just like to view me, or is he going to attack me, or like what is the intention here? Especially with players, AI, it's just kind of like, oh, the AI is
Yeah,
just doing its own thing. Like probability wise, especially with this difficulty, they're probably not going to invade me. But like with players, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you taking the brain power instead of focusing on your cities or
hmm,
worker tiles? It's like, what are you doing? You know, it's just paranoia is a real thing in Civ
and you're
for
a
sure.
100% right on that. And it was kind of in that game, I like to think, that kind of cemented like my beginning strategy. I didn't really,
Hmm.
develop my multiplayer strategy until I really started playing with the no quitters groups.
Yeah.
But that early on, it just started to be like I got to defend myself,
Hmm.
and that's where,
Yeah.
yeah, I think like if we ever talk about our current game, my use of forts everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit, if you don't mind?
Oh yeah.
Like your developing strategy, because I've played a few games with you and I've noticed that. I think that would be an interesting a little tangent.
Oh, of course, yeah. So, I mean, there's like the general strategy I follow. Like, this is how I'm gonna win the game. And then there's the strategy like it's these things, I like these habits I always try to do, just because I love to do
Hmm.
them. And one of them is, especially if I'm in like in a smaller area, is to use forts everywhere where possible. So in our
Hmm.
current game, I'm playing as India, like in, yeah, the game we're playing
Yeah.
right now. and along the
Yeah.
coastline, I just have forts
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes, I've seen it. It's at least four or five. It makes my citadel in the middle of the desert whale in comparison.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh! But
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's interesting how predictable sometimes people can be. Because like
Mhm.
I love the Navy. So if I have a coastal city, especially when I play as England or whatnot, you'll definitely see my big stick diplomacy navy coming around,
Oh
just
yes, go.
checking things out. That's I feel like I'm the best at naval combat, or like the best combat that I'm at
Mhm.
the best combat I'm with at
Oh
with
yeah.
is naval combat for
Yeah.
sure.
And then, oh, another thing from that game, being like the first real game, was the revelation of wonders. Oh
Oh
my
yeah,
gosh. As soon as I
that.
built the Great Wall, every single
Hmm.
game I've ever played since that, I've
Uh-huh.
always pushed the Great Wall. Even if it's
Yeah.
completely useless. I just love it so much. And even if he becomes
Yeah.
obsolete when whatever the tech for artillery is, I love it so much.
And even getting we've been in games with the friend that you talked about where we've wonder sniped him
Oh
before,
my
or I've been one
gosh.
or we've been victims of wonder sniping, and that reaction that you either put out or your friend puts out, it makes it worth it sometimes.
Yeah,
uh,
wonder sniping. I'll stray off real quick to
yeah.
tell the quick tale of the wonder snipe
Oh
I did
yes,
on him.
yes. Go for it.
This was way far down past our
Hmm.
Brazil and Russia game, and I had gotten a good handle of the game, and we were pretty much on par with each other. I think by now I had started joining the no quitters group, so I don't want to say I
Hmm.
was better than him, but I was better than him.
Hey, that's fair.
And I was playing as Germany, and he was playing as Ethiopia. We'd have picked random
Oh
civs,
God.
and that's what they gave us. And we get,
Hmm.
we get boom all the way down to the towards the end of the game, and it was, I think it was actually this game. I don't know how long it took me to realize this, but I put a diplomat in his capital, and you're able
Hmm.
to see like what they're producing in their capital.
Right.
So I get, I think we had been in the Renaissance for a while,
Hmm.
and I'm looking at his capital, and I see that he's building the Uffizi, and I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't really need the Uffizi, but like the free great artist would be nice. Like, I have no need for the Uffizi whatsoever. Like, it has nothing to do with
Hmm.
my strategy. But I'm like, screw him. I want to take it. So
Yeah, that is a motivating factor
oh
for sure.
yes, yes. So I start building the Uffizi, and it's gonna take me 7 turns, and he has 5 turns left on it. And I'm like, shit, I gotta get this. So I start having my workers chop down forests all around Berlin. I'm like, oh god, I'm still not there yet. So he has 2 turns left, and I think I had 3 or 4. And
Hmm.
like the turn kicks over, and I had a new social policy. And I'm looking at my trees, and I had the last one. I think it was like the City Connection one in Liberty. So I
Hmm.
finish Liberty, and I get the free great person. I got the great engineer. I rushed production, and then boom, next turn when
Oh
he
my
had 1 turn
goodness.
left, blank 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 has completed the Uffizi.
Yes. Oh my
And then
God. That's.
one of his favorite quotes is, interesting. And that's just all he said.
Yeah, the amount of pettiness that comes with wonder sniping, because it's like it's not something I don't know. It's like, especially with him, it's not something that
Mhm.
you directly confront someone about. It's just like, oh, especially if you don't know the person.
Oh yeah.
That's even better. Like, I trying to hide your like your excitement when it says, oh, the wonder has been built in a faraway land, or whatever the
Oh my
message is.
yeah.
It's like, no, I didn't do that. It must have been the AI.
And I think
I don't want you to war me.
yeah, and that's pretty much the case for every game, honestly, when you're playing with friends.
Hmm.
And it all starts with the Great Library. It
Oh
all
yes.
starts there.
I didn't really understand or really pursue wonders until like I don't know, like maybe like 2 years into me playing. Um, just because I didn't like I've been so lore based and just so like playing as if I'm ruling a country, not playing a game that has certain strategies.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely a rush at the beginning,
Oh yeah,
for sure.
100%. And especially when you get like the Oracle and all that stuff. Definitely the ancient and classical wonders, I think, are the most hectic
Hmm.
because your production is the worst then, and you're waiting so
Oh
many
yeah.
turns. In some cases, like if you're playing like a longer paced game, you're waiting like 20 something turns for that great library.
Yeah, it's risk management.
Yeah.
It's like, I have two cities, a city, maybe three. Um, do I want to risk so much percentage of my like production? Like I could be building all these other things. And that was my
Mm.
rationale for a long time. It's just like, well, it's not worth it. It's just like I could in this time I could produce X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and for a while, especially after that first game with my friend with Brazil and Russia, I
Hmm.
geez, I pretty much always in the capital was just building wonder after wonder all the way until
Oh
like the
yeah.
Renaissance, and then I would get that second city with the tradition and liberty,
Hmm.
and I was just like that's where I would build some units and stuff. But I would that's the one strategy I used for a long time was to always
Hmm.
just build like a bunch of crap, and I never my military like if you looked at the demographics tactically, I'd always be in last until like
Oh yeah.
musketmen arrived. That's when I just start screaming
Same.
out units.
Yeah, I mean, because at that point, the basic necessities
Mhm.
uh, are completed, and you can focus on unit production. All right, yeah. So in the story now, it's kind of that industrial age is the beginning of the industrial
Yep.
age. So what happens there? What happens next?
So we get industrial age, and that's when religion starts to kind of take that turn. We got printing
Mm-hmm.
press and stuff coming up. Everything's starting to move along. Of course, he, in his infinite wisdom and all his naval units, he founds the World Congress. And all the
Mm-hmm.
way into the United Nations, he's got dominance like you've never seen before. Pretty much every single
Mm-hmm.
city state that's on the map is his ally. And oh my gosh, yeah. So we're pretty much just spamming units all the way into
Mm-hmm.
like the atomic era. And by the
Right.
time he researches the Manhattan Project, I was nowhere near any of that. I think I still like had a bunch of musketmen with no money to upgrade them to riflemen.
Yeah, I've been there with games with you because you obviously have more experience and more playtime than I
Hmm.
do, and it is a bit of a humiliating or just like a little bit of a depressing feeling when it's
Yeah,
like, oh, if I even wanted to go to war with you, it wasn't the point, or it's not worth it. So like, how were you feeling during that time? Like,
I
and
was
how were you communicating with him? Was it peaceful, or was it kind of like that undertone where it's like you're eventually going to go to war, but no one's actually addressing the elephant in the room? Like, what was it like?
yeah. So I mean, just like a real quick kind of like history of like us
Hmm.
playing games together. This is when I started to get real big into Steam. And
Yeah.
before he had introduced me to Civ, I had introduced him to Rome 2, part of the Total War
Oh yeah,
franchise.
yeah.
And
Great series.
game after game, I was creaming him, even when we both were
Hmm.
over 1,000 hours. And I was like, I'm way better than this kid, blah, blah, blah. And then we got to this Civ game. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to humiliate me. Yeah. And I was like, crap, because I'm sitting there on the border where I can just see like a tile or two in with my, musketmen and riflemen, and boom, there's a Brazilian infantry. I remember
Right.
like looking at the infantry and then seeing the marine. I'm like, what the hell's a marine? I'm like, is it better?
And it's like you take your musket man, and it's like you pretend to attack, but you don't actually attack, and it's like, oh, you do like 0.5 damage or something
Hmm.
ridiculous, and you lose the unit. And then it's like, oh well, I'm just gonna have to play nice to him, I guess.
Yeah, and he would always, because we were always in the voice chat for the whole thing, and
Right.
when he got getting to railroads and stuff, he's like, "Oh, I have nothing to build," because at that time he probably had his like 3 or 4 cities just on wealth or research focus, and
Yeah.
even in that, then he's just zooming ahead even more in tech. And he said
Hmm.
he just has workers just removing railroads and rebuilding them, or like roads and all kinds of like this crazy shit. I'm like, okay, because he's like sitting there bored, and I'm like, okay, what's my plan for if we go to war? And then I'm moving up my artillery that he gifted to me that I still have. And then I see rocket artillery on the other side of the border. I'm like, oh, Christ. And then,
It's like, oh,
yeah.
I'm just this puppet state at this point.
hmm And
It's like the
yeah,
U.S. and Latin America or something.
yeah. And when we get like really into the United Nations, there's pretty much no AIs left on the board. And it's just me and him.
Hmm.
And whatever he proposes, he gets. Because I have, what, like freaking 6 delegates and he has like 50.
Right.
So there's no way. And I'm like, please make me the world leader. He's like, no.
Was he going for a diplomatic victory, do you think?
I think so. I think honestly, by the time like a little while before the game ended, he had already won somehow. Be
Mhm.
it actually, I think when we officially ended, he had built the spaceship, like done the science victory. He was influential over me in culture. I don't think he had all the policies though, and then he also had the
Mhm.
diplomatic. But the one thing I'll always remember about that later part of the game was when
Uh-huh.
he finished the Manhattan Project.
Oh yes, I've heard. Yes, yes, yes.
So of course, seeing that, you know, anyone playing the game, they're gonna want the biggest boomers. And I'm like, nukes. I'm like, hell yeah, I want
Yes.
nukes.
Yeah.
And so then I like, go to the tech tree. I'm like, click on the atomic theory or whatever it was. I'm like,
Hmm.
just research that. And I'm like, oh, tens of turns out, probably like 100 turns out. Like, oh, I'm never gonna get there. And then
Hmm.
with my diplomat, or not my diplomat, what am I talking about? My spy in a city, again, before I knew we could do diplomats, I saw that he was building an atomic bomb. I'm like, oh
Oh
God.
boy,
And,
it's
jeez, probably like,
had your name all over
oh
it.
yeah, I'm like, because he had it in, oh my gosh, I think it was in Salvador, was the city he had
Hmm.
closest next to me. And we had started so close to each other that an atomic bomb didn't have to be a missile, and that city could reach Moscow. I'm like, shit, I don't even have the
Right.
tech for bomb shelters yet, so there's nothing I can do. I didn't even know bomb
Yeah.
shelters
You
existed
didn't
at
even know
that
bomb
point.
shelters existed. Yeah.
And I'm
Oh.
like, oh, I'm freaking out. And
Uh-huh.
so the trend kind of continues where I'm spamming out missionaries to convert all these cities to my religion. I'm
Uh-huh.
setting up units to the border, and the voice chat's kind of quiet. And then all of a sudden, I just hear him going, "Shit, shit, oh shit, oh my god!" And I'm like, "What's going on?" And right as he said that, I had I was going through my units and my worker needed to get moved, so the camera pans over to the worker and I see the mushroom cloud over Salvador and all his units falling and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm like, did you nuke yourself? He's like, yeah, shit. Because
Oh my
when he did
goodness.
that was right after he was telling me that he was in range of Moscow. So he definitely
Uh-huh.
had like the range attack open, and
He
instead
was.
of he missed like next to the city.
I mean, yeah. When you go nuclear, the nuclear mode, it's definitely a bit finicky,
Oh, definitely.
and I've had my fair share of blunders in games, but I can honestly say that I don't think I've ever done something quite
I have
quite like that.
in every YouTube series I've ever watched. Shout out to Filthy
Hmm.
if anyone watches him.
Yeah.
Never seen
Oh,
anything
he's
like
great. Yeah.
that. Never seen anyone, even like no one's
Even the
done it on
Yogs
purpose.
cast,
Yeah.
like I mean, the Yogs cast are still probably better than me, but they're not like
Oh,
they're just a group of guys playing the game for fun.
exactly.
So they have their moments.
Oh, definitely.
Nothing like that.
Oh my god.
uh,
But that was, and I was the host of the game. I don't know why,
mhm.
but he's like, "Oh, we got to go back. We got to go back," because we were like
Yeah.
saving every turn. And he's like, I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to go back." And he's like, "Why?"
Mhm.
And I was trying to make some bullshit excuse because I wanted him to keep his nuke city. I was like, "Oh, I built a bunch of railroads." And he's
Corrupt
like, "What the
files,
fuck? You could just rebuild them."
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh my god.
That
Yeah.
single best moment, honestly. from any game was
Yeah,
that one right there.
for sure. I mean, there's been times where like I played with you where it's like, oh, I think I have. There was that one game where I thought I could have a sneak attack on you, and then I got absolutely creamed. Um, but that was my own doing against you. This is him shooting himself in his foot. That's too funny. I mean, yeah, we've all been there, but
Yeah, I've
that's
gotten like
just
scared a few times, with like,
mhm.
especially when I moved over to the enhanced UI mod, where like when
Right.
you pan over or click on a ranged unit or like the nuke, it'll show you like your cursor will start showing you the range attack. I'm like, oh shit, am I about to nuke somebody? But it's like
Right.
it's just showing you what the range attack is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just a little scary, but I don't.
So
Even with lag, I couldn't see that happening.
yeah, man, that's too good. So what happened after that? Did the game kind of die down? Did you just kind of call it after that, or
Yeah.
did you?
So we went back a turn and then kept
Mm-hmm.
going. And then we were just like pumping out units. And it's the legacy of pretty much every single multiplayer game where
Mm-hmm.
it's just, everyone's kind of like head to head. They're, getting ready to fight and boom, just fizzles out. And that was the case with the Germany and Ethiopia game when I wonder sniped him.
Yeah.
Once I researched atomic theory, it was over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there's another game I just remembered. I gotta talk about. I don't know if we should keep talking about it here or wait for another episode, but it's a
Perhaps
good one.
perhaps another episode, but I mean, if it relates, we can talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
That's another game with him.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder that because you've played games with complete strangers, right?
Oh yeah.
So like, how does that? Because I've only played with you guys, and like I've only played with friends, so there's that complete element where it's like, oh, let's just call it like, or like let's do this certain
hmm
scenario, or like let's build a giant army and then fight to the death at the end, like and like crush the AI in the meantime.
Yeah.
So like, how does a game with complete
Well,
strangers
I'd
compare?
say the paranoia is
Mm-hmm.
definitely a lot greater. Because when you're playing with your friends, you're like, I just want to spite them. Just kind of rub it in a little.
Mm-hmm.
But with a stranger, you have no idea what they're gonna do. You've never played
Right.
with them before, and you pretty much, like as you said before, you're kind of analyzing every move they make as a potential threat. And I want to say some of the early multiplayer, like just random people ones I did, was just looking at what games were open under the multiplayer tab and then just joining them for a little bit, see how far it gets. Sometimes the games would finish, sometimes they wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
People just randomly leave, but it wasn't until like the no quitter stuff that you're actually getting the
Yeah.
full experience. But
Cool.
in those games, I'd say the paranoia with wonders was definitely more so, um,
Mm-hmm.
in the desire to like beat them more so than your friends was definitely
Yeah.
greater. And it was just in those games for me, it was just all about hammers, like ramping up production, get as much as possible.
Of
And
course.
sometimes it would just kind of fizzle out, like we wouldn't attack each other. There was one
Mm-hmm.
game, oh god, it was just the two of us, and I think like
Mm-hmm.
Venice. And then he like put it like at three AIs or something, or three city states.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he steamrolled me. God, he nuked like he had enough nukes to destroy all my cities, and then just took my capital. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not fun.
that put a pause on the multiplayer games for a little while. But
Oh, I bet. Well, Gary, thank you for joining me on this next episode of Swift Stories. It sounds like you have a lot more stories to share, so I'd love to have you
oh,
back.
of course, I
Uh,
love talking about it. Get the word out there.
yeah, and I have some stories in the works right now that I would love to read to you or discuss with you just to get your input
Oh
on,
my gosh,
as always.
yes. Can't wait to listen to him.
And as always, if you have your own stories that you'd like for me to read and discuss, feel free to email them at storiesofciv@gmail.com. Gary, do you have anything else to add?
Hey, everyone, keep on listening. Check out the Reddit. You know,
Yeah. And as always, keep telling stories. All right. Have a good one, everyone.
ciao.
Bye bye.